want to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of our friends and partners across America for all that you do in so many ways to make it possible for us to share the gospel of Jesus Christ to this nation and to the nations of the world. I love you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to our Tuesday conversation with our Hagee Ministries partners and Cornerstone family. Today I'm so excited to have a very special guest joining me. Dr. Emerson Eggerichs is going to be here, and we're going to discuss important matters that are needing to be addressed inside the family during these unprecedented times. You know, we hear a lot about marriages that are under brand new levels of stress and kids who are falling into depression because they don't have the ability to connect and socialize in their normal environment, and all types of relationship strains that are existing because of be it the pandemic that has caused so many things to be disruptive, or just the fervor and tension that we have in so many aspects of our lives today. We're going to be discussing that with Dr. Eggerichs in just a few moments, and I want you to invite people to come and be a part of this conversation. Share it on your Facebook platform. Give others the opportunity to know that what we're going to be talking about here is important to them. As always, if you have a need today, don't be afraid to reach out to Hagee Ministries. Contact us, 210-491-5100. That's our prayer line. There's prayer partners who are standing by, or simply send a comment down there in the bottom of the thread, and our ministry team and our digital greeters and ministers will be glad to be a part of reaching out and connecting with you today. I can make this announcement when it comes to regular function and wonderful news. August the 17th, Cornerstone Christian Schools will be open for school with teachers in classes and students. And yes, we're taking all the necessary precautions. Yes, we've figured out how to accomplish the needed 6 feet of social distancing as recommended, and all of the different practices are going to be in place. Things may not look exactly as they did last year before we left during the COVID shutdown, but the good news is on August the 17th, we are going to celebrate our Warriors returning to campus, our first day of school, teachers back in front of students in a healthy and safe environment, learning and giving families the opportunity to move forward. That's our goal each and every day, to continue to make progress and be able to live our lives in the fullness and the promises of God's word, because I believe that's what he wants for each and every one of us. Another individual who would agree with me is Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. He's an award-winning author, a family therapist, and a man of God who has committed his life and talents to helping others understand the dynamics that exist in family relationships. And Dr. Eggerichs, thank you for being with us today. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well, Matt. Thank you for the invitation. Very exciting to chat with you today. Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad to have you here. As a matter of fact, Kendal was sending me with a list of things that I needed to ask.
Good.
I figured that we'd have a conversation after the program about that.
So, oh, okay. All right. Good. That's good.
With regard to families and the things that are, they're facing during this very difficult season of pandemic, what are some of the things that you're seeing kind of bubble up to the surface, and how would you recommend families address it?
Well, we have conflicts on a daily basis. I mean, I always say, I'd have been a great parent had it not been for my 3 kids. They just kept interfering, Jonathan and David and Joy. And so, family tensions are going to arise. But what happens is that whatever the conflict may be, it can go deeper quite quickly. You can see it in marriage as well. Sometimes I ask the question, have you had a conflict with your wife recently when suddenly the issue didn't seem to be the issue? And the question that arises, what is the issue when the issue isn't the issue? Because this is what happens during a pandemic, or anytime we are kind of confined into these quarters, we suddenly begin to react to each other. And it's almost like, it seems that you're more upset with me than about this particular issue.
Yeah.
It's what I call the crazy cycle. And it's based on Ephesians 5:33, where God commands the husband to love his wife and instructs the wife to respect her husband. And I point out that she needs respect, he needs love, but the apostle is gender specific there. And I thought to myself, what happens when my wife, Sarah, and we've been married 46 years, what happens when Sarah feels unloved? You know, the issue may have been that I forgot something and now she's reacting to the issue, but deeper, it's because she's feeling, do you not care? Did you not hear what I asked? Do you not really love me? I mean, see how it goes a little bit deeper real quick? And then she reacts in a way that appears to me as disrespectful. Because I'm a good-willed guy. I didn't intend to forget, right? And then I shut down because I can't believe that she would say that to me. So I go quiet, which feels even more unloving to her, but I felt disrespected. And so the crazy cycle is this. When a wife feels unloved, she tends to react in a way that feels and sounds disrespectful to her husband, though that's not her intent. And when a husband feels disrespected, he tends to react in a way that feels unloving to his wife. That's not his intent. And we start to spin. Without love, she reacts without respect. Without respect, he reacts without love. Without love, she reacts without respect. Without respect, and this starts spinning. And sometimes if we don't stop and step back and ask, what is this deeper issue, then we are continuing on the crazy cycle, mad about that issue, mad about this issue, and never really talking about the fact, hey, bottom line is I was feeling unloved. Well, you know, when you reacted that way, I was feeling disrespected. But many couples don't have a vocabulary or language to introduce that. And so there's this avoidance. And that's my concern. They get on the crazy cycle, may not even know they're on it. And if they do, they don't have the language to know how to get off of it. That makes sense, Matt?
Absolutely. You know, as you were giving that very wonderful explanation of why so many things can get so loud so quick. You know, honey, did you pick up the milk that I asked you to pick up when you left this morning at 7 o'clock for work, and you've been through 8 hours of war in the boardroom, and, you know, that 1 gallon of milk is now more important than our entire marriage, because if you'd have bought that milk, I could go on and on with the examples that you just listed out as you're discussing it. And one thing that really impacts me as I'm listening to this great explanation of how relationships get on that crazy cycle is that we are so prone to measure our behavior by our intentions and another person by their actions.
Yes, excellent.
You know,
excellent.
I didn't intend to forget the milk in this example, but she yelled at me. That's right. How dare she yell at me?
That's right.
And the only thing I can do based on her actions is yell back. And then, you know, I've totally invalidated her need to feel as though I was sympathetic and loving towards her, you know, needs within the house. And therefore, we're now on this crazy cycle where instead of exchanging hugs, we're throwing hand grenades. and the thing about, especially in the dynamic of family, you know, I think one of the reasons why you attack the people who are closest to you is you know where to punch. You know, I don't know where to push a stranger's button. I don't know how to tell somebody I just met, you're just like your crazy Aunt Edna, you know, but whenever you've gotten to the intimacy of family and transparency and, you know, my wife knows all of my strengths and all of my weaknesses and all of my insecurities, and I know hers. Well, when it's time to argue, I know exactly what to say to take this up 3 or 4 notches. Just watch this, you know, and I think that therein lies a lot of what creates what we consider to be the crisis of the moment, rather than understanding how we got in this crisis.
And what is your remedy? How do you say to people to decode that dynamic? Because it's going to happen. It's not something that is going to absolutely cease from taking place. It happens in all of our relationships. As I say, Sarah and I still spin on the crazy cycle, but we don't keep spinning on it because we have a little skill, a little knowledge to recognize it and how to get off of it. How do you coach or counsel people based on that description you just gave to decode this and to diffuse this?
Well, you know, for me as a pastor, I am outside of my scope of practice if I don't start with the Bible. So, you know, the first thing that I encourage, especially in the dynamic of marriage, is the Bible says, dwell with each other according to understanding. And based on that one particular passage, as Kendal's husband, not as a husband, as Kendal's husband, I have to invest myself in understanding what is it about Kendal that needs to be done in this moment to help us overcome this. And I have to make up my mind. I either want to be right or reconciled. And as long as I'm stubborn enough to fight for what I believe is right or what my rights happen to be, I'm only going to create more work between the right and the reconciliation. If I develop an understanding of when I hear this tone of voice or when this type of answer is given, one of the things that I had to learn in my relationship with Kendal is if I asked, how are you doing? And she said, fine, there wasn't really a good follow-up question. Just sit still until she wanted to tell me what fine meant. Because my nature is I'm a very curious and engaging person. Well, you sound upset. How are things going? And the more you threw on that fire, the more there was to burn, And so in developing understanding, I recognized, okay, this is time to be still and be quiet, which is hard for me. It's hard for me to be still and be quiet. Another example, I had to learn that there were times when Kendal would come to me and say, I need your help. The way that I function, there is no greater joy than hearing somebody tell me they need my help. I love to help. I love to solve problems. I love to be a solutions guy. And what she was really communicating when she'd say, I need your help, is all I want you to do is listen. And it frustrated me to no end that she would present a problem with which I thought she wanted me to help. And then when I would present a solution, she would say, well, why would I do that? And I'd pull my hair out. I'd tell her, I said, honey, I'm like a Labrador that you show a tennis ball to, and you said, you want to catch it? Do you want to play fetch? Do you want to go get it? And I said, the more you show me the tennis ball, the more excited I get. And I said, and then right about the time I think you're going to throw it, you just take it and stick it in your pocket and walk back inside. And so to answer your question of, what remedy do I recommend? I say, listen, guy, I said, you've got to learn how to dwell with your wife according to understanding. Understand she needs to be loved, and then learn how to love her, because she needs to be loved in a way that means something to her, not the way you think it should mean to her. And vice versa, she's got to learn what does respect look like for you.
Mm-hmm. No, that's excellent. That's excellent. That's that 1 Peter 3:7 verse that you're talking about. Husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, since she's a woman. And he actually goes on to say, so that your prayers may not be hindered.
Correct.
And it's really a sobering thought, isn't it, Matt, that the way in which I treat my wife, Sarah, directly relates to how the Lord responds to me. It's almost like he's saying, Emerson, you're the Christ figure in the marriage. I'm the Christ to you. If as the Christ figure to Sarah, you're not listening and understanding and responding to her, I, the Christ, am not going to listen and understand and respond to you. It's not that I don't understand what you're saying, but fair is fair, Emerson. It's a tremendous incentive. And I've said to men, some of you men walk in complete integrity on every area, but you're living with a woman that's driving you nuts, and you say, no one can understand that woman, and I'm not going to try to start. I'm sick and tired, right? Well, it's deeper than just her. It's also your demonstration to Christ that you want to at least try to be understanding, and that empathetic understanding, trying to figure it out. None of us are ever going to be able to figure her out totally because we're not a woman, but we can have that demeanor, and there's a direct correlation between your prayer life and your relationship with your wife. And the challenge always is for us as men to be reminded of that, but it's also a great incentive because this ultimately is between Christ and me, and he's given me a tremendous motivation. And I encourage men tomorrow morning, if today you sought to be a little bit more understanding, tomorrow then petition the Lord on something and see if it doesn't kind of make a little bit of a difference, because he's pleased with that. But I think you also then referenced the women, because in 1 Peter 3:1 and 2, several verses earlier, Peter said to the women who are saying, my husband's disobedient to the word. He could have been a carnal believer or an unbeliever. Peter does not identify him. And they were saying, how do I deal with this? He said, you can win your husband without a word, which is contradictory to a female, just as it's contradictory for a man to try to understand a woman who's telling me she has a problem, but I'm not supposed to solve that problem, to your point. It's counterintuitive for a woman to be more quiet and have a respectful demeanor, because there's no way in her mind that he can get what he's supposed to get to change unless she verbalizes that. She doesn't know that actually it's her quiet spirit at times where there's conflict, and that respectful demeanor, that in and of itself brings us under conviction. We're very observant to a respectful demeanor. And it's almost like she's entered the honor code, particularly if we've been disobedient, have not done what we're supposed to do, and she has that demeanor. There is perhaps no more powerful way. We're not what we call expressive responsive. Men are not like women. Immediately, oh, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Women are going to engage the present, but men are thoughtful. But that doesn't mean they're not watching. And they are not going to respond immediately, but you'll see a gesture, as I say. So if you say to him, even on the heels of being disrespectful, I was wrong, I shouldn't have said it that way, I was disrespectful. Don't say you're unloving, because he knows you're loving. There's no command in the New Testament for a wife to agape love her husband. Why? Because God is not going to command you to do what he created you to do. He put within your nature this loving, unconditional love toward family, toward intimates. You can't stop saying, love you, love you, love you, love you, love you, love you. It's in you. God does not command you to do what he designed you to do. But it's not natural for you to be respectful when your husband appears unloving. It's very natural for you to be disrespectful and contemptuous to motivate him to be loving. And Peter is saying that will not win any man's heart. So what you have to do is maybe apologize for the disrespectful demeanor, not apologize for what he did wrong. That's his issue. But if you were disrespectful, that would be one way to begin. Or if you're trying to get a message through to him, just simply preface it by saying, how can I say this in a way that you don't feel I'm bringing this issue up to diss you? I'm not trying to dishonor you. You would die for me if I don't kill you first. The truth is, I'm trying to get a message through to you, but sometimes I think when I communicate it, you think I'm using this topic as another opportunity to send you a message that I don't like who you are as a human being. How do I bring this up? Help me, coach me. And sometimes in these initial changes, you've got to ask for his input. And don't expect him to think right away. Some men are more quiet. They need time to think about it. Don't put him in, don't corner him because he'll get defensive, but say, would you think about that? And then revisit it later. Matt, we've seen so much healing just on that little dynamic of a wife toward her husband. So it works both ways. Husbands are to be understanding, according to Peter's admonition. But he said you can actually win the heart of your husband by your respectful demeanor. And the reason that's important is that when a woman is upset, the University of Washington said, and they studied 2,000 couples for 20 years, when a woman is upset, her hand is on the hip, her scolding finger comes out, her sign, her roll in the eyes, the face turns sour, the eyes are dark, and the head goes back. And when she's really upset, the word choice of contempt rolls right off. I mean, it's just wham. Now, she's doing all of that to try to awaken him to the hurt that she's feeling. But you cannot be disrespectful to motivate a husband to be loving any more than a husband can say, I'm not talking to her and he stonewalls for 3 days. I'm going to be unloving to teach her to respect me. Ain't going to happen. Does this make sense?
It makes perfect sense, especially if you've been married longer than 5 minutes. You know, it's the struggle of self and self-sacrifice. You know, I mean, we've talked a lot about scriptural application that is directly applied to the marriage relationship, but there's another verse that says, I'm crucified with Christ, therefore I no longer live, but Christ now lives in me. Mm-hmm. And as you're talking about what's natural and instinctive and, you know, reactionary for a female, and what's natural and instinctive and reactionary for a male, mm-hmm. those are the things that are in our flesh. Well, if we're going to function in the right relationship with our spouse that God has given us, the first thing we have to do, and I heard this said a few weeks ago, and I've repeated it consistently since because of the way it impacted me, is we've got to crucify our flesh. And the thing about flesh is that most Christians want to cast it out. We act like it's a spiritual thing. I bind that. Well, you can't cast out flesh. You have to crucify it. And that's an act of your will to make that die. You know, as you're talking about, God's not going to put in you something that he's already created you to do. Well, your flesh is not going to just follow your spiritual utterance to leave. You've got to simply make up your mind, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to behave in a better way. Mm-hmm. You know, it's an act of your submission to the needs of others that helps you grow in that relationship. And, you know, in this season where, you know, COVID has created additional stresses, I think it's very powerful for husbands to understand what their wives' true need is. And for wives to truly understand their husband's need for that respect, because both dynamics, the provider outside of the home, the nurturer inside the home, all of these roles are being challenged by outside influences. And if we don't understand she needs me to love her even more intensely now than in a previous time because of all of the other things that are adding stress and tension, and vice versa, I need her support. I need her respect. I need her to tell me you can do it, because we're making decisions now that, are in some ways unprecedented, although not unparalleled. There have been other times in the world that families have gone through struggle. And I think that, we can look at those types of seasons and find out from other relationships, how did you survive? How did you get through that? What enabled you to become closer instead of falling apart? Because, I know I've heard it in so many different dynamics, where in the last 3 months, marriages, we've just decided that we're going to split up. We can't take this anymore. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe that a virus caused that dissolution. I believe that the fractures were there, and this was just the stress that created the breakdown.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, that's exactly right. The question is, do these situations cause us to be the way we are, or do they reveal that this is the way we are? And that's an intimidating question, because to your point earlier, we want to say my heart is filled with goodwill, whereas my spouse does not have that goodwill. We have a tendency to defend ourselves in that regard and to have that question asked. But the quicker we ask that, I think the freer we become, because if I live my life with the idea that you're responsible for my responses, rather than the axiom that we espouse, my response is my responsibility. And at the end of the day, Sarah doesn't cause me to be the way I am. She reveals the way I am. Therefore, if my response is unloving, for instance, it's really about me. It's not about Sarah being unlovable. It's about the command coming to me to be loving. God didn't say, Emerson, love Sarah if she's only lovable. The command comes to me to be a loving man, regardless of Sarah being lovable or even regardless of her being respectful. And many women on the other side stumble over this. I think instinctively we understand unconditional love, but Peter is talking about unconditional respect. This man was disobedient to the word. He didn't deserve respect. And that's an oxymoron to many people. That's a contradiction of terms. And women immediately stumble. Well, I can't respect this. I can't respect that. I'm not going to respect this. This is bad. This is bad. She immediately launches into all the things that are upsetting her that she finds unacceptable. And we're not talking about that. We're talking about respectfully confronting those things that aren't respectable. And that's the difference. This is about who you are as a person, about your demeanor as a woman as you address these issues that upset you. And if you don't do that, he's not going to hear the issue. He's going to think the issue is being used to send him a message that you find him despicable. And he'll shut down on you every time, because God did not hardwire a male to live with a person at an intimate level who he thinks has contempt for who he is as a human being, any more than a woman's going to be sexually intimate with a husband who's angry and harsh at her all the time. She's hardwired not to respond to that. She may go through the motions, but there is no interest in that physiologically. God did not wire you. So once we understand this, it can be very, very helpful to us. And I think another point, talk about crucifying the flesh, Paul in that Ephesians 5 passage says, we do what we do as to the Lord. And one of the incentives for crucifying the flesh, we might say, is that ultimately Jesus Christ is standing beyond the shoulder of Sarah. So that I put on love because I'm loving Christ, who just happens to have Sarah stand between him and me. And this is something we've been espousing, going from the horizontal to the vertical. And Paul hits this theme so often that he almost seems to refrain from saying it, because he said it so many. As to the Lord, as to the Lord, as to the Lord. And there's this section 5 through 6 where he's hitting this among a number of relationships. And he says, whatever each one does, this he'll be rewarded, the New International says, that every time we put on love toward our wife, who we think isn't lovable or even isn't respectable, when we have that demeanor that she can't make me unloving, she can't make me hate her. This is a choice that I make. Once I come to that realization, I'm free. I am free within my spirit. Doesn't mean it's easy, but if I hold to the position that I am the way because my wife is the way she is, then I only have one mission, and that's to change her into the kind of person I need her to be so I can be happy. And we need to be wiser than that. But here's the irony. Once I get to this idea where I'm going to do this unto Christ, I'm going to have this demeanor, I'm going to fail at it, but I'm going to get back up. It's amazing how soon Sarah began to change. And when, it's just the irony of it. And when Sarah began to do this respectful thing toward me, not because I deserved it, but she would say, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Help me say this in a way that doesn't cause you to think I'm trying to, show you that I don't. I'm actually trying to connect with you. You have a need that only I can meet. How do I say this in a way that you don't shut down? Once she did that, it was amazing how my spirit softened and I engaged her. It just works. It just works. But the key is doing it unto Christ, but also not assigning blame. I am the way I am because of you. No, my response is my responsibility. Sarah doesn't cause me to be the way I am. She reveals the way I am. I liken it, and then you can comment on this. A speck of sand in the human eye causes irritation, then infection, and if not cared for, loss of vision. But that same speck of sand in an oyster causes irritation, then concretion, and produces a pearl, as we know. And I like to ask the question, did the sand cause the result in the oyster? Did the sand cause the results in the eye? Technically, no. The sand is an irritant that reveals the inner properties of the eye. And if it is a cause, then a pearl may pop out the next time we get something in our eye. But that's not going to happen. And why does that pearl come out in the oyster? Because it's within the nature of that pearl that sand is an irritant and reveals that. Well, I asked the question, hey, are you married to an irritant? And if the answer is, yeah, more than I'd like to admit, well, that irritant is revealing whether or not you're a pearl, an oyster, so to speak, and it's producing a pearl, or you're just going to lose vision for this relationship. But the minute we come to a point where we say, I really am free, as much as I want to assign blame, I'm going to do this unto Jesus Christ. This is also a spiritual issue. To your point, I've got to come to a point of just crucifying the flesh, that I've got to crucify that. Sometimes that metaphor is hard for people, but there's also a moment, like apparently several weeks ago, that really hit you hard. And you say, yeah, that's exactly right. I can act on that, and I can do this because it's in Christ I can do this. So I appreciate those strong words, Matt.
Well, and I'm listening to so much good information. In just a few minutes, I want you to tell all of our viewers how they can find out more about this topic, because you've shared on the relationship between men and women. You've shared on the relationships within the family between parents and children, fathers and daughters, mothers and sons, and so many dynamics. And it's been a blessing to Kendal and I and our 4 children, and so many people who get the chance to hear you speak in different events and conferences. And, but before, we get to that, you keep saying it just works. Yeah. And every time you say that, I keep being drawn back to, Peter and his admonition and his example to the New Testament church, to your point of respect. He's telling the younger women, he says, look to your elderly examples. And then he references Sarah. You've talked about your Sarah, your wife. Right. He's talking about Sarah, the wife of Abraham. Yes. And said, who did not think it strange to call him Lord. And if you really take the time to unpack what Peter is saying, here you have a man who in Abram was a part of a community in the Chaldean area of Ur, who they had wealth, they had resources, they had all of this stuff. And he gets this crazy idea that, hey, we are going to leave all of this and go move out in the wilderness, and we're going to follow a God that no one has ever seen. I know, Sarah, that every God you've ever worshipped is on an altar, but that's over. The God that we're going to talk to, we'll figure out his name when we get there. He's the one who calls the stars by name. He's just got all these crazy ideas. And apparently Sarah honored Abram enough that she said, yes, Lord, and went. And then they decide that they're going to split ways with Lot, and he gives Lot the choice between the good land or the bad land, totally contrary to what a man in the Asian area would have done at the time. But he yields to the younger, and Sarah says, yes, Lord. And all through their relationship, we're going to Egypt. I'm going to tell him you're my sister, not my wife. Yes, Lord. I mean, she never lost her ability to maintain a relationship of respect in spite of all of the things that if we were in that same situation, we might have decided we're going to kill this guy. And because of it, when he had no power and no ability to perform the task of being a father in his old age. I believe that it was the seeds of respect that she had sown into his life for so many decades, that whenever the Spirit moved on him and God said the time has come for the promise to be fulfilled, he had a desire to have this child with Sarah because she had earned his love and respect and affection over years of her faithfulness. You know, I mean, I know a lot of people, and, you know, this might be just my interjection into the thought, but, you know, I know a lot of people that if the Lord said, hey, I know you're way past the age of childbearing, but I want you to have one more kid with your wife. He said, pick a new woman. I'm not having one with her, you know. And it's because Sarah had called him Lord. She honored him. She respected him for so many years that she was able to get him to do what was virtually naturally impossible. But she had earned that through her faithfulness. And I think that there are so many times in relationships that wives can put unsurmountable pressure on a husband. I wish he had a better business. I wish he was able to do this. I wish he was able to do that. And I often encourage him to say, you would be shocked what he could accomplish if you just respect him, if you just cheer him on, if you just, you know, give him the admonition that he needs to believe for better things. Because some of the times the reason a man does not grow is he doesn't think he has the power to.
Yeah, and I think that Peter is capitalizing on the deeper principle which we're talking about, and that's that respectful demeanor, that respectful attitude that Sarah displayed. You nor I would tell a woman to call her husband Lord, but I think there is this.
It would be nice on occasion. I mean, if it's your birthday, you know, it might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, that's true.
A little L, not capital L.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the idea that we're capturing here is God honored Sarah. And I think one of the things that many women have told me, that there comes a moment when they stop preaching because it's not getting through. And so they entrust the situation. And what I think a woman has to realize is she has these fears and vulnerabilities, which Sarah did. And there was this moment where ultimately you have to give this over to Christ. And one of the testimonies of women that's constant among these types of individuals is, I gave this over to Christ. I let the Lord defend me. I let the Lord speak to my husband. And that's a faith venture, but it's counterintuitive to a female, because how are you going to get message to him unless I'm telling him? I'm talking all the time. I've got to tell him. And this really is a spiritual discipline, but not for the purpose of being quiet or silent or just, you know, saying nothing. You got to stuff your emotions. Where there's something precious and deep here about a faith venture. And God honored Sarah. And this is Peter saying, look, she won this disobedient husband. This brought him under such conviction without a word, didn't need to preach. Let God be God. And this is a message to some of you ladies out there. You've tried everything to get through to your husband. He's not listening. Then just relax. Just relax and let God show you this. He's not mocking you. This isn't some cosmic killjoy. The danger is it's two men who are coaching you on this. And so I know where the culture is at. You're going to react negatively to this. So we just say, this is between you and Christ on the basis of that 1 Peter 3:1-2 passage, and just explore this as an option. Do it in humility and holiness, but let the Lord encourage you through this, because everything you've tried up to this point isn't working, is it? The louder you scream, the more you, and you know deep in your heart the reason you have this moment emotionally is you're trying to get him to rescue you. Yeah. You're trying to awaken him to your deeper need to be loved by him. But you cannot use unholy means of disrespect and contempt to achieve worthy ends, and that is to be loved as a special human being. It's not going to work. I wish I could say that it did, but it won't. So here's why we've written the book Love and Respect, and why you can go to loveandrespect.com, loveandrespect.com, and we have resources that will step you through this on how you can win the heart of your husband in a way that pleases God without you compromising your integrity as a woman.
So that's loveandrespect.com. And you know, Dr. Emerson, in standard times, you're obviously out and doing live events. I know that your website will often keep folks updated. If they get your content and they want to find out places that they can hopefully be able to engage with you in the future, does the website direct them to any type of digital media, podcasting, or any type of conversations that you're having on an ongoing basis?
It does. It does. In fact, we are, I think, with everyone who's doing conference work, that has just completely shut down. All the doors are closed on that. But I did a thing called This Present Distress in 1 Corinthians 7 chapter. to the married. In fact, it's the longest and most detailed chapter on marriage in the New Testament. Of the 30 times marriage is mentioned, 9 times marriage is mentioned in 1 Corinthians 7. And the married believers were experiencing what he called a present distress. He doesn't identify that, but most would conclude it was a food shortage in the Roman and Greek world for about a 10-year period, that the food storage, I mean, it threatened. It's not unlike our pandemic. I mean, it was an unnerving period of time, and Paul's making reference. So I just did a 4-part series on how to deal with our present distress, and I would love for people to at least engage that in this pandemic time, and particularly moms and dads. I mean, the point is that these kids are going to irritate us. In fact, they're going to say things and do things that just really upset us because we think they're on a mission just to, make us mad. And that's why I wrote the book, Love and Respect in the Family. And this is a very important time for all of us to figure out, how do we deal with these distresses inside and outside the home? This is serious stuff. And it's important that we understand what Matt said earlier. There are a lot of people calling it quits because of this confined time, because they think we made a mistake in marrying, or we don't know how to do this relationship. The fact of the matter is, it's just a little skill and a little knowledge in certain areas, and it can make a humongous positive change. As he referenced earlier, it does work if you have a little skill and a little knowledge. If there's any degree of goodwill. Now, if you say I married Hitler's distant cousin, or as one woman wrote, I married Satan, and I said, where's Satan right now? And she wrote back, he's at the park with the kids. And I said, can I share with you, you're overstating this just a bit. I mean, no mother's going to give her children over to Satan. You're trying to make statements here, but you're profiling way too much. Now, if you profiled your spouse as Hitler's cousin to Satan, all bets off. I can't speak to that. But if your husband or wife has basic goodwill, we're not saying that they have good follow-through. We're not saying they're perfect. But there's no evil going on. It's just that we've been confined, and we don't like each other because we keep irritating each other. And we get to a point where we think this person's impossible. Maybe. On the other hand, could there be a little skill and just a little knowledge? Not a lot of skill, not a lot of knowledge, even as you've been listening today to Matt and me, with a few little things that he and I are trying to apply. And we had to learn some of this stuff.
Oh, yeah, I got the scars to prove it. Road rash all down the side of my body.
That's right. But I mean, eventually we learn, even if we have to get run over by a Mack truck. But my point is, once we get those skills and knowledge, just a little skill, a little knowledge, you have an influence. I think some of us get so frustrated that I've tried everything I know to do. I don't think so. If they've got goodwill, and you yourself are willing to say, yeah, they got basic goodwill. They don't get up early in the morning storyboard ways to make me mad. If that's the person you're married to, then we're saying to you, you can influence the situation. You don't have to be a hopeless, helpless victim. But I want to invite you to go to our website, or Matt's got content as well, that it's time to awaken. We have to come to a moment where you say, you know what? I'm going to learn some things, differently. If you keep doing things the way you've been doing them, you're going to find the same results, as we say. But just with a few little insights, I believe, and we see this all over, your spouse is going to soften their spirit. And that is what I want you to experience.
And I think that it's very doable. You just have to want to. I often visit with couples that, they're at a breaking point, and one of the common phrases they use is, I was wrong. And what they mean is, I was wrong in marrying this person.
Oh, yeah, okay.
They want to disqualify all of those years of relationship with that one statement. And just with the inversion of perspective, you weren't wrong. Currently, you're not right. And it's how do you get back to that right path that enables you to resolve the problem and stay in the relationship that God created for you. And, loveandrespect.com, I know for a fact, because I've been there and I've seen it and I've bought it and I've got the t-shirt, that information is there. And Dr. Emerson, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today and share so much insight. A really not just wonderful application of God's word, but I believe a life raft to people who are hanging on by a thread. I know that this situation has created so much stress and concern. And as you're talking about, live events, Cornerstone Church is open. We're having service every Sunday. If you have an itch to speak to a live audience, I can fix that, sir. Come see us in San Antonio, and we'll be glad to have you anytime. We can talk about that offline, but I just want to let you know we're open. The folks who are able to come are joining us each and every Sunday, and it's a great opportunity for us to continue to see God do great things, even in a crazy and chaotic world. God bless you, Doctor. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Matt. God bless you.
So loveandrespect.com is one of those resources that I wanted to share with you today, because I know that if this isn't something you need today, you may very well need it in the future. And if you don't need it today, I'm certain you know somebody who does. Dr. Emerson Eggerichs, not only does he have the years of understanding through therapy and family counseling, but the application of God's word in his own relationships. It's a tried and true principle that you have the opportunity to decide to put into your practice in your family today. And I assure you, it will be a blessing to you. Speaking of being a blessing to you, I want each and every one of you to know that every time we have the opportunity to connect, whether it's here on Facebook or at Cornerstone Church or in the messages you send online, it's a blessing to me. So thank you for who you are and what you mean to this ministry, how you've helped us in this season continue to see God do great things. If we can be of assistance to you in any way, please reach out and let us know how. To those of you in the San Antonio area looking for a place to worship, Cornerstone Church is open. To those of you in the San Antonio area looking for an educational solution, CCS is going back to class August the 17th. And if you are outside of the greater San Antonio area or looking for a digital platform, we also have an online school that's available as well. You can find out more about that at saccs.org. So God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for being with us here today. As always, we look forward to seeing you again very soon.
I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of our friends and partners across America for all that you do in so many ways to make it possible for us to share the gospel of Jesus Christ to this nation and to the nations of the world. I love you. Thank you.
You've been watching Hagee Ministries. Looking for more content to help you in your daily walk? Listen to our podcast or subscribe to Hagee Ministries on YouTube.